I still remember the way the security guard looked at me that night. Not angry, not curious, just dismissive, like I didn't belong in a world that smelled like champagne and polished marble. It wasn't just the look, it was the pause before it. That brief, silent calculation his eyes made as they traveled from my worn sneakers to the frayed hem of my jeans, up to the oversized college hoodie that swallowed my frame like I was trying to disappear inside it. Maybe I was. I stood in front of the grand entrance of the Eldridge Crown Hotel, my reflection faintly visible in the glass doors behind him. The building rose above me like something untouchable, golden light spilling from chandeliers inside, laughter muffled behind thick glass, the low hum of a string quartet drifting out every time the doors opened for someone who clearly belonged. I didn't look like them. I didn't sparkle. I didn't shine. I looked like someone who had taken a wrong turn and ended up somewhere far too expensive for her existence. "You're at the wrong entrance," he said flatly. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. I swallowed, steadying my voice. "I'm here for the engagement party." He didn't move, didn't step aside, didn't even pretend to reconsider. "Name? Harper Langley." For a fraction of a second, I thought something might change. That maybe the name would mean something. That maybe he'd check a list, realize his mistake, and offer the kind of stiff apology people give when they suddenly recognize value where they hadn't before. But instead, he smiled, not kindly, not apologetically, a slow, curling smirk that settled into his face like it had been there all along, waiting for a moment like this. "Service staff uses the back," he said, lifting a hand and pointing casually toward the side of the building. "There's a separate entrance. Service staff." The words didn't land all at once. They sank in slowly, like water seeping into fabric, cold, heavy, impossible to ignore once it spread. Not sister, not guest, not family, just help. And the worst part, it wasn't him. It was how easily the world agreed with him. Because standing there, dressed the way I was, looking the way I did, I fit the role he had assigned me. I could have corrected him. I could have pulled out my phone, made one call, said one name that would ripple through this entire building like a shockwave. I could have forced those doors open, not physically, but with authority. I could have reminded him, reminded everyone, exactly who I was. But I didn't, because something inside me, something quiet, patient, and a little broken, stopped me. It whispered, wait and see. See how far this goes. See how people treat you when they think you're nothing. See who they really are when there's no consequence. So instead I smiled. Soft, polite, unthreatening. The kind of smile people expect from someone they don't have to take seriously. "Got it," I said. His smirk widened, satisfied, like he had successfully put the world back into its proper order. I turned without another word and started walking. The gravel beneath my shoes crunched with each step as I made my way around the side of the hotel. The further I moved from the main entrance, the quieter it became. The music faded. The laughter dissolved into the night air. In its place came something else. The sharp clang of metal trays. Voices calling out orders. The hum of generators and kitchen vents pushing heat into the cold evening. The illusion of perfection ended here. This was the part of the world no one dressed up for. No chandeliers, no curated smiles, no pretending. Just work, just reality. The service entrance was exactly what you'd expect. Plain steel doors, slightly scuffed, a small overhead light flickering like it couldn't decide if it wanted to stay on. For a moment, I stood there, not because I was unsure, but because I felt something shift inside me. A strange, quiet awareness. Up front, I had been invisible because I didn't belong. Back here, I would be invisible because no one bothered to look. Two different reasons. Same result. I reached for the handle and pushed the door open. Warm air hit me instantly, thick with the scent of garlic, butter, and something roasting that made my stomach tighten despite everything else. Inside, the energy was overwhelming. Chefs moved like they were part of a choreography, only they understood. Orders were shouted, repeated, executed in seconds. Plates were assembled with precision and sent out through swinging doors that led to the world I had just left. No one stopped me. No one questioned me. One glance at my clothes, my presence, and I was already categorized, already explained, already dismissed. "Hey, you're the replacement," someone called out, tossing me an apron before I could respond. I caught it instinctively. There it was again, the assumption, the identity handed to me without question. And again, I didn't correct it, because now I was curious, not just about them, but about myself. How long could I exist like this? How long before someone actually saw me? Or would they ever? I tied the apron around my waist slowly, fingers steady despite the strange tightness building in my chest. Because this wasn't just about a security guard anymore. This wasn't just about a mistake. This was about something deeper, something that had followed me my entire life. The way people saw what they expected to see. The way worth could be erased by appearance. The way even family could look straight at you and not recognize you at all. I glanced once toward the direction of the ballroom. Somewhere beyond those walls, my sister was laughing, celebrating, building a future on polished surfaces and carefully chosen words. And here I was, standing in the heat, in the noise, in the truth, unseen, unclaimed, unacknowledged. I picked up a tray someone shoved into my hands and stepped forward into the chaos. Because if no one was going to see me, then I was going to see everything. 2 weeks earlier, my sister Evelyn Langley had called me. Her voice carried that familiar tone, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. The kind of sweetness that wasn't meant to comfort, but to soften the blow of whatever came next. "Try to look decent," she had said. "Daniel's family is very particular." Particular. That word had followed Evelyn her entire life. It was the word she used whenever she wanted to sound polite while being quietly cruel. Particular about clothes. Particular about friends. Particular about where she sat, what she ate, who she associated with. Particular, in her world, meant better than ordinary, better than people like me. I had leaned back against my kitchen counter as she spoke, staring at the chipped edge of the marble I'd never bothered to replace. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, but I had grown used to that. Silence didn't judge you. Silence didn't ask questions you didn't want to answer. "Of course," I said lightly. "Wouldn't want to embarrass you." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Just a second, but I heard it. The hesitation, the unspoken truth she didn't bother denying. Then she laughed. Soft, airy, dismissive. "You know I didn't mean it like that," she said, which of course meant she absolutely did. And then came the part that lingered, the part that stayed with me long after the call ended. "And maybe don't talk too much about your online thing. They wouldn't understand." My online thing. I remember staring at my reflection in the darkened window across from me as she said it. The company that had consumed my life. The sleepless nights. The debt. The fear. The mornings I woke up wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. The nights I sat on the floor, surrounded by unpaid bills and empty coffee cups, convincing myself not to give up. The deal that nearly fell apart. The investor who pulled out at the last second. The moment everything almost collapsed. And the moment I refused to let it. All of that, reduced to 2 words. Online thing. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it hurt in a way that was too familiar to react to anymore. Evelyn had never asked. Not really. She never sat down and said, "Tell me what you're building." She never said, "Are you okay?" She didn't want the story. She wanted the summary. And when the summary didn't fit into something she understood, she dismissed it, filed it away under unimportant. That's who I had always been to her. Not a person to discover, but a conclusion she had already reached. The underachiever, the quiet failure, the sister who never quite made it. And maybe, once a long time ago, that had been true. Growing up, Evelyn was everything I wasn't. Confident, effortless, beautiful in the kind of way people noticed immediately. Teachers adored her. Friends gravitated toward her. Even our parents, though they never said it out loud, leaned toward her orbit. I was the background, the steady one, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who didn't shine. And when I left home to build something of my own, when I stepped outside the version of me everyone had accepted, no one followed. No one asked what I was becoming. They just assumed I had stayed the same. So Evelyn kept her version of me, the safe one, the small one, the one that made her feel bigger. And I let her, because it was easier than explaining, easier than fighting to be seen, easier than risking that even if I told her the truth, she still wouldn't care. So when she saw me that night, standing near the service entrance, mistaken for a delivery girl, she didn't hesitate, didn't pause, didn't look twice. She just accepted it, because it made sense to her. Of course Harper would be mistaken for staff. Of course Harper wouldn't belong at the front entrance. Of course Harper would need to be redirected. These people always get confused, she said to the guard, laughing lightly like it was an inconvenience she had learned to tolerate. These people, her own sister. The words echoed in my head long after she walked away. Not because they were loud, but because they were quiet, careless, unintentional, and somehow that made them worse. Because it wasn't anger. It wasn't cruelty in the obvious sense. It was something deeper, something colder, indifference. I stood there for a moment after she disappeared, watching the space where she had been like maybe, just maybe, she would turn around. Maybe she would look again. Maybe she would realize. But she didn't. She never did. And that's when something inside me cracked. Not loudly. There was no dramatic moment. No visible fracture. Just a small, almost imperceptible shift. Like ice forming under the surface of water. Like something warm slowly going still. It wasn't the first time Evelyn had overlooked me. But it was the first time I let myself feel it fully. The weight of it. The finality of it. Because this wasn't about misunderstanding. This wasn't about timing or distraction. This was clarity. She saw me exactly as she believed I was. And nothing I had done, nothing I had built, nothing I had become, had ever been enough to change that. I pressed my lips together, forcing the emotion down before it could rise any further. Because there was no point. No confrontation would fix this. No explanation would rewrite her version of me. People don't change their perspective because you tell them to. They change it when they're forced to see something they can't ignore. And Evelyn had never been forced to see me. Not really. But tonight, that might change. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I needed validation. But because for the first time, I was done being invisible in my own story. I turned toward the service entrance again, the noise from the kitchen spilling out into the quiet night. Voices, movement, reality, a world that didn't care about appearances, a world that didn't pretend. And as I stepped forward, I felt that quiet, broken part of me settle into something else. Something steadier, something sharper. Because if Evelyn wanted to believe I was nothing, then I would let her. For now. Because the truth, the real truth, wasn't something you explained. It was something you revealed. And when it finally surfaced, it didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. The kitchen was chaos. Real chaos. Not the curated, expensive kind upstairs with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, but honest chaos. Heat, noise, sweat, humanity. It hit me the second I stepped fully inside. The air was thick, heavy with steam and urgency. Orders were shouted in overlapping waves. Metal clanged against metal, and the sharp rhythm of knives hitting cutting boards created a kind of music, unpolished, relentless, alive. Someone shoved a tray past me. Another brushed my shoulder without apology. A pot hissed angrily as it met flame. No one stopped. No one slowed down. And no one asked who I was. They handed me an apron without asking questions. And I didn't stop them. Because in that kitchen, no one cared who you were. Only what you could do. Shrimp Station! A voice barked. And before I could even process it, I was guided, no, positioned, beside a stainless steel counter piled high with raw shrimp on ice. The woman next to me didn't even look up as she spoke. "You know how to devein?" I nodded. It had been years, but some skills never really left you. "Good. Keep up," she said, already moving twice as fast as I was. And just like that, I was part of it. I peeled shrimp beside strangers who laughed, cursed, and told stories without filters. There was no politeness here, no careful phrasing, no pretending. "Bride's a nightmare," someone muttered from behind me. "She made the pastry chef cry yesterday," another voice added, almost casually. I paused for half a second before continuing, fingers moving automatically. "Peel, slice, clean, repeat." "She changed the menu 16 times," someone else said. 16. 17, corrected the woman beside me. "She changed it again this morning." A ripple of groans followed. "She said the flowers looked cheap and had them flown in from Italy." A younger guy chimed in, shaking his head. "Italy? Like anyone can even tell the difference." "She can," someone replied dryly. "Apparently." Laughter broke out, not kind laughter, but the kind that came from shared exhaustion. From the absurdity of it all. Each sentence felt like a quiet betrayal. Not loud, not explosive, but steady, persistent. Because this wasn't the Evelyn I remembered. Or maybe it was. Maybe I had just refused to see it. Maybe I had held on to an older version of her. The one who used to braid my hair when I was little. The one who whispered secrets under blankets late at night. The one who promised we'd always have each other no matter what. Maybe that version of Evelyn had slowly disappeared, and I just hadn't noticed, or hadn't wanted to. "Hey," the woman beside me nudged my arm. "You're slowing down." I blinked, realizing I'd paused again. "Sorry," I muttered, picking up the pace. "Peel, slice, clean." The rhythm grounded me, kept my hands busy while my mind tried to catch up with everything I was hearing. "Did you see how she talked to Philippe?" someone asked. "The head chef," another replied. "Yeah, thought he was going to quit on the spot. She told him his food was almost acceptable." "That man has 3 Michelin stars," someone scoffed. "Not tonight, apparently." More laughter. But underneath it, I heard something else. Resentment. Fatigue. The quiet anger of people who were used to being overlooked. Used to being spoken to like they were replaceable. Used to being treated like they didn't matter. And suddenly, the kitchen didn't feel chaotic anymore. It felt honest, because nothing was hidden here. No one pretended to be something they weren't. Upstairs, everything was polished, controlled, beautiful. But down here, this was where the truth lived. I glanced around, really looking for the first time. The chef at the stove, barking orders with a voice that carried authority earned through years of experience, not inherited through a last name. The dishwasher in the corner, moving with quiet efficiency, ignored but essential. The servers weaving in and out, balancing trays with precision while exchanging quick jokes to survive the pressure. Every person here mattered. Every role had weight. And yet, upstairs, they would all become invisible. Reduced to hands that served, voices that stayed quiet, faces that blurred together. Just like me. "Drink water," the woman beside me said suddenly, shoving a bottle toward me. "You'll pass out otherwise." I took it without thinking. "Thanks." She shrugged. "You look like it's your first shift." I almost smiled. "If you only knew," I murmured under my breath. She didn't hear me. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, it didn't matter. Because for the first time that night, I didn't feel out of place. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I was just there, working, existing, being. And somehow, that felt more real than anything happening upstairs. 5 minutes, someone shouted. The energy shifted instantly. Faster movements, sharper focus, final touches. Plates were lined up like soldiers preparing for inspection. "Service is about to start," the woman beside me said. "Brace yourself." I nodded, wiping my hands on the apron. But my mind wasn't on the food. It was upstairs, On Evelyn. On the version of her that existed in that ballroom. Perfect. Polished. Performing. And for a moment, I wondered if she even knew who she was anymore, or if she had gotten so good at pretending that she believed it herself. Move, someone snapped, and I stepped aside just in time as a line of servers rushed past, carrying plates that looked like art. Carefully crafted, perfectly arranged, designed to impress. I followed them with my eyes as they disappeared through the swinging doors, back into that other world. The one where appearances mattered more than truth, where people like Evelyn thrived, and people like the ones in this kitchen were forgotten. I looked down at my hands, still damp, still slightly trembling from the pace, but steady, real, mine. And for the first time that night, I understood something clearly. Upstairs, Evelyn was trying to become someone else. And downstairs, I was remembering exactly who I was. Not the version people dismissed, not the version they assumed, not the version they were comfortable with, but the one I had built, piece by piece, failure by failure, truth by truth. And maybe that's why I stayed, why I didn't leave, why I didn't reveal myself the moment I could, because there was something powerful about this, about standing in a place where no one knew you, and seeing everything clearly, because when people think you're invisible, they show you who they really are. And tonight, I was finally seeing everyone, including my sister. 3 years ago, I was broke. Not metaphorically, actually broke. The kind of broke that doesn't just live in your bank account, it settles into your bones. It shows up in the way you calculate every purchase, the way you hesitate before turning on the heater, the way you convince yourself you're not hungry because skipping dinner feels easier than admitting you can't afford it. I lived in a studio apartment with peeling paint and dreams that felt too big for the space they were trapped in. The ceiling leaked when it rained. The window didn't close properly, so winter found its way in no matter how many towels I stuffed into the cracks. My bed was pushed against the wall next to a desk that was really just a secondhand table with one uneven leg. And that table, that unstable, scratched, barely standing table, was where everything began. I built my company there, a digital hospitality platform that nobody believed in. Not my parents, not Evelyn, not even me, some days. Especially not on the nights when the numbers didn't make sense, when the code refused to cooperate, when rejection emails piled up faster than I could delete them. I remember one night vividly. The power had flickered twice, my laptop battery was dying, and I had exactly $14.32 in my account. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the screen like it might give me an answer if I just looked long enough. "What are you doing?" I whispered to myself. No one answered. Of course no one did, because there was no one there. No applause, no encouragement, no one waiting to catch me if I fell. And I almost did fall. More than once. I failed. I failed in ways people don't talk about. Quiet failures. Invisible ones. The kind where nothing explodes. Nothing collapses dramatically. You just slowly realize that things aren't working the way you hoped they would. The first version of the platform crashed within a week. The second never launched. The third almost worked. Almost. I remember refreshing the dashboard over and over again, waiting for user activity that never came. Watching zero stay zero, until I stopped refreshing. Because even hope gets tired eventually. But something in me refused to quit. Not loudly, not heroically, just stubbornly. So I rebuilt. Again, and again, and again. I learned things no one taught me. Negotiation, failure, silence. The art of pretending you're not terrified when you absolutely are. I took freelance jobs during the day to survive. Coded at night until my vision blurred. Slept in fragments. Lived in between. And somewhere along the way, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There was no big moment. No sudden breakthrough. Just a small notification one morning. A booking. Then another. Then 3. I thought it was a glitch. It wasn't. It was real. Tiny. Insignificant to anyone else. But to me, It was everything. Because it meant someone, somewhere, had trusted something I built. That trust multiplied. Slowly at first. Then faster. Then faster than I could keep up with. The platform grew. Not explosively, but steadily, reliably, like something that had finally found its place in the world. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe it might actually work. That maybe I wasn't chasing something impossible. That maybe I wasn't the failure everyone assumed I was. So I took a risk, a bigger one than anything before. I used everything I had, every cent, every connection, every ounce of credibility I had scraped together, and I bought a struggling boutique hotel. It was a mess. Outdated systems, low occupancy, staff who had stopped caring because no one had cared about them. Everyone told me it was a mistake, that I was moving too fast, that I didn't have the experience, that I didn't belong in that world. They were right about one thing. I didn't belong, but I was done asking for permission. So I learned, from the ground up, front desk shifts, housekeeping rotations, kitchen inventory, customer complaints, every role, every detail, every mistake. I didn't run the business from an office. I lived inside it, and slowly, painfully, it worked. Occupancy rose, reviews improved, systems streamlined, people started noticing. Not me, the results. And that was enough, because the results led to opportunities. Another property, then another, each one a little bigger, a little harder, a little more complicated, and I handled them the same way. Quietly, carefully, intentionally. I didn't chase attention. I avoided it. I built everything through holding companies, partnerships, structures that kept my name buried beneath layers of business. Not because I was hiding, but because I was learning. Because I wanted to see how people behaved when they didn't know who they were dealing with. Because I wanted the truth. And the truth doesn't show itself when people are trying to impress you. It shows itself when they think you don't matter. So I stayed invisible, even as the empire grew, even as I acquired the Eldridge Crown Hotel, even as I stood in the executive suite that overlooked the city and signed documents worth more than everything I had ever owned combined. I stayed the same, or at least, I tried to, because success doesn't erase who you were. It just gives you a different view of it. And that night, standing in my own hotel, wearing an apron, invisible to everyone, I saw everything. I saw how quickly people dismissed what they didn't understand, how easily they categorized worth based on appearance, how confidently they judged without ever questioning themselves. The security guard, the guests, the staff, even Evelyn, especially Evelyn, because she wasn't reacting to me. She was reacting to the version of me she had created in her mind years ago. And no amount of success, no achievement, no empire had ever been enough to change that, because she had never seen it, never asked, never wanted to. And standing there, surrounded by noise and heat and truth, I realized something that hit harder than anything else that night. I hadn't built this empire to prove them wrong. Not really. I had built it because I needed to prove something to myself. That I could survive, that I could create, that I could become someone who didn't need validation to exist. But now that I stood here, unseen in a place I owned, I understood the real power of it. Not the money, not the properties, not the influence, but the choice. The choice to reveal the truth, or to keep watching, to let the illusion continue, or to break it. And as I wiped my hands on the apron, listening to the chaos around me, feeling the quiet weight of everything I had built, I knew one thing for certain. Tonight wasn't just about being unseen. It was about what would happen when I finally decided to be seen. From the shadows of the ballroom, I watched them. The Harrington family. Old money, they said. Untouchable. Perfect. But something fell off. Too polished. Too loud. Too desperate. Their laughter carried a fraction too far. Their smiles stayed a second too long. Every gesture felt rehearsed, like they had practiced being impressive in front of a mirror until it became muscle memory. I had seen real wealth before. Real power. It didn't need to announce itself. It didn't need to perform. This was something else. So I looked deeper. And what I found wasn't elegance. It was collapse. Debt stacked on debt. Properties mortgaged beyond saving. A reputation held together by illusion. It hadn't taken long. A few quiet searches in the business center. A couple of calls to people who owed me favors. Public records that anyone could access if they knew where to look. And suddenly, the story unraveled. The Harrington estate, refinanced 3 times in 2 years. Their investment portfolio, liquidated. Their legacy assets, gone. Sold quietly to maintain appearances. They weren't just struggling. They were drowning. And yet, here they were, standing in the center of the ballroom like royalty, dripping in borrowed confidence, speaking in tones that suggested superiority they could no longer afford. They weren't looking down on my sister. They were hunting her, because they believed she had money, because she had told them she did. And suddenly, the entire night made sense. Evelyn wasn't just pretending. She was performing, for people who were pretending even harder. And somewhere in the middle of all those lies, she had dragged me in as her imaginary safety net. Her successful sister, the one she didn't respect, but fully intended to use. I tightened my grip on the tray I was holding, forcing my expression to remain neutral as I stepped further into the crowd. Invisible. Again. And because I was invisible, I heard everything. Of course, we've always believed in strategic partnerships, Mrs. Harrington was saying, her voice smooth but edged with something sharper. It's not just about love, dear. It's about alignment. Alignment. I almost smiled at that. Evelyn nodded eagerly beside her, her posture stiff, her smile just a little too wide. Yes, absolutely. Our families are very aligned. I watched her closely, the way her fingers twisted slightly at the edge of her dress, the way her eyes flickered for approval after every sentence. She wasn't relaxed. She wasn't confident. She was trying so hard to be accepted, trying so hard to belong. And for a brief, fleeting moment, I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, not even disappointment, just sadness, because I knew that feeling. I knew what it was like to want approval from people who had already decided your worth. I knew what it was like to shape yourself into something smaller, something more acceptable, just to fit into a space that was never meant for you. But Evelyn had taken it further. She hadn't just adjusted. She had reinvented herself, built a version of her life that looked impressive from the outside, even if it wasn't real. Your sister, Mrs. Harrington continued, casually lifting a glass of champagne, the investor. She'll be contributing to Daniel's ventures, I assume. There it was. Not subtle, not even disguised. A direct line to the money they believed existed. Evelyn didn't hesitate. Of course, she said quickly. She's very successful. She just prefers to stay private. Private. I let the word settle in my mind. It was almost ironic, because she was right. I did prefer to stay private, just not in the way she thought. I wasn't hiding because I was small. I was invisible because I chose to be. There's a difference. A dangerous one. Excellent, Mrs. Harrington said, her smile tightening ever so slightly. We'll need to discuss the specifics soon. Translation. We expect access. We expect control. We expect your family to save us. Evelyn nodded again. Yes, of course. Whatever is needed. Whatever is needed. The words echoed louder than they should have, because she wasn't just offering money. She was offering me, without asking, without knowing, without understanding the magnitude of what she was promising. I shifted slightly, stepping back as another guest reached for a glass from my tray. They didn't look at me, didn't thank me, didn't see me. And for once, I was grateful, because it gave me space to think, to piece everything together, to see the full picture without interruption. This wasn't just a social event. It wasn't just an engagement party. It was a transaction, a negotiation disguised as celebration. The Harringtons needed money. Evelyn needed status, and both sides were willing to lie to get what they wanted. The only problem? They were both lying to the wrong person. I moved through the crowd slowly, listening, observing, collecting fragments of conversations that all told the same story in different ways. Temporary liquidity issues, market fluctuations, just restructuring assets, excuses, all of them, polished language covering raw desperation. At one point, I caught sight of Daniel. He stood slightly apart from the others, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. He wasn't laughing, wasn't engaging, wasn't performing. He looked trapped, like someone who had been placed in the middle of a situation he didn't fully control. Our eyes almost met. Almost. But he looked away first, and that told me everything I needed to know. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to feel the weight of it. Enough to feel uncomfortable, but not enough to stop it. Not yet. I exhaled slowly, grounding myself as the noise of the room swelled around me. Music, laughter, clinking glasses, all of it layered over something much darker, something fragile, something that could collapse at any moment. And I realized that moment was coming, soon, because lies like these don't hold forever. They crack, they shift, they demand more lies to sustain them, until eventually, there's nothing left to hold them up. I glanced at Evelyn again. She was smiling, laughing, playing her role perfectly. But I could see it now. The strain beneath the surface. The fear she didn't want anyone to notice. And for the first time that night, I understood her. Not her choices, not her actions, but her fear. The fear of not being enough. The fear of being seen as ordinary. The fear of losing everything she had built around herself. Even if that everything was built on illusion. And suddenly, my anger softened, just slightly, because this wasn't just about deception. It was about desperation. On both sides, two families, two lies, one fragile connection holding them together. And me, standing in the middle of it all, the only one who knew the truth, the only one who could end it, or let it continue. I looked down at the tray in my hands. Still steady, still unnoticed, and I made a decision. Not yet. I wouldn't reveal anything yet. Because timing matters. Because truth, when revealed too early, gets dismissed, ignored, explained away. No. If I was going to break this illusion, I needed to do it when it mattered most. When it couldn't be ignored. When it would force everyone in that room, especially Evelyn, to finally see. So I lifted the tray slightly, stepping back into the flow of the party, blending once again into the background. Watching, waiting, because the lies had already been set in motion. And when they finally collided, there would be no pretending left to hide behind. The silence didn't just fall. It cracked, like glass under pressure, sharp, sudden, irreversible. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The chandelier above us still glittered like nothing had changed, but the illusion it once illuminated was gone. Evelyn stared at me, not with anger, not even with humiliation, but with something far more unsettling. Recognition, like she was seeing me for the first time. "Stop," she said, her voice low, trembling. "Just stop talking." But I didn't. I had spent too many years being quiet. Too many years shrinking myself into something acceptable, something ignorable, something small. "I didn't come here to embarrass you," I said calmly. "You did that yourself." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Daniel's mother, perfect posture, diamond earrings catching the light, tightened her grip on her clutch. "You expect us to believe this?" she asked, her voice slicing through the tension. "That you own the Eldridge crown?" I met her gaze without hesitation. "I don't expect anything," I said. "But you might want to check the registry documents in your inbox." At the edge of the room, my general manager shifted slightly, already anticipating the moment. Phones began to light up, one by one, like a constellation forming in real time. Daniel frowned, pulling his phone from his pocket. His thumb moved quickly, scrolling, opening, reading. And then, his face changed. The confidence drained first. Then the color. "What is this?" he muttered. His mother leaned toward him. "Daniel." He didn't answer immediately. Because he couldn't. Because the truth, when it finally lands, doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it just settles. Heavy. Unavoidable. "It's real," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's listed as the primary owner. Majority stake." The room erupted. Not loudly, not chaotically, but in that controlled, suffocating way wealthy people react when their reality fractures through whispers, glances, carefully masked panic. Evelyn shook her head. "No," she said. "No, that's not possible." Her eyes snapped back to me, desperate now. "You're lying." I tilted my head slightly. "Am I?" She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor, each step sharper than the last. "You think this is funny?" she demanded. "You think you can just walk in here dressed like that and ruin everything?" "I didn't ruin anything," I said quietly. "I revealed it." Her hand trembled at her side. "You've always been jealous," she spat. "Always. Because I had the life you wanted." That almost made me smile. "Almost." "I never wanted your life," I said. "I wanted your honesty." That hit her. I saw it. A flicker. Small, quick, but real. And then it was gone. Replaced by anger. By pride. By the version of herself she had spent years perfecting. Daniel stepped forward then, his attention no longer on Evelyn, but on me. "You knew," he said slowly. "You knew about my family." "Yes." "And you waited until now?" I held his gaze. "I waited until the truth mattered." His jaw tightened. "You could have come to us privately." "And said what?" I asked. "That the empire you're so proud of is built on loans you can't repay? That your old money reputation is one audit away from collapsing?" A sharp inhale came from somewhere behind him. His mother. "Of course." "This is slander," she said, her voice icy. "You have no right." "I have every right," I interrupted calmly. "Especially when you tried to secure this engagement under false pretenses." Evelyn turned to him, panic breaking through her composure. "Daniel, don't listen to her. She's twisting things. She always does." "Do you have money?" he asked suddenly. The question cut through everything. Clean. Direct. Brutal. Evelyn froze. Of course I do," she said quickly. "I told you my investments, my—" "Not stories," he snapped. "Proof." Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. And in that silence, everything was confirmed. Daniel took a step back. Then another. Like distance alone could undo what had just happened. "You said your family would support the expansion," he said. "You said your sister—" "She doesn't count," Evelyn said quickly, too quickly. "She's nothing like us. She just got lucky." I let out a soft breath. There it was. Even now. Even here. She still couldn't see me. Not really. Lucky. I repeated. Evelyn's eyes flashed. "Yes. Lucky. You think building some online platform makes you better than me?" "No," I said. "But lying about who you are doesn't make you better than anyone else." Her composure shattered then. Not cracked. Shattered. "You don't understand," she cried. "I had to do this. Do you know what it's like to be invisible? To be the one people overlook?" The irony hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I almost laughed, but I didn't. "Do you?" I asked quietly. She stopped, just for a second. And in that second, she knew. She knew exactly what she had done. To me. To herself. To everything. But instead of facing it, she looked away. Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "This engagement is over," he said. The words landed like a final verdict. Evelyn turned to him, eyes wide. "No, Daniel, wait. You lied to me," he said. "About everything." "I can fix it," she insisted. "I can." You can't fix what doesn't exist. Silence. Again. But this time it was different. Heavier. Final. Daniel's mother straightened, her expression carefully composed once more. We're leaving, she said. Now. And just like that, the Harrington illusion began to walk out the door. One by one, perfectly dressed, perfectly broken, Evelyn stood in the center of the ballroom, abandoned in the very world she had tried so hard to belong to. Her breathing was uneven now. Her makeup, flawless just minutes ago, suddenly looked like a mask slipping off. This is your fault, she whispered, looking at me. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stepped closer, not as the invisible girl, not as the underestimated sister, but as myself. No, I said gently, this is the consequence of your choices. Tears filled her eyes. Real ones this time. Not strategic, not controlled. What am I supposed to do now? She asked. For the first time that night, she sounded small, human, lost. I considered her, really looked at her, and I realized something that surprised me. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. Because hate requires energy, and I was finally done giving her mine. That, I said, is up to you. I turned to my general manager. And the event, I said calmly. Make sure the staff is taken care of. He nodded immediately. Yes, Miss Langley. Around us, the room began to move again. Slowly, carefully, like people waking up from a dream. They weren't ready to leave. I picked up the folded apron from where I had placed it earlier, ran my fingers over the fabric, a reminder of who I had been, of what I had learned, and of what I would never allow again. When I looked up, Evelyn was still there, still watching me, but something had changed. The arrogance was gone. The performance had ended. All that was left was truth. And for the first time, she had to face it. So did I. But unlike her, I wasn't afraid of what I'd see. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The ballroom, once filled with music, laughter, and carefully curated perfection, now felt cavernous. Hollow. Honest. Every table half cleared. Every chair slightly askew. Like the room itself had exhaled, finally free from the weight of pretending. Evelyn stood a few feet away from me, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she were trying to hold something together that had already come undone. I didn't see you, she said again, quieter this time. Not as a defense, not as an excuse, but as a confession. I let the words settle between us, because for once they deserve space. No, I said softly. You didn't. She flinched. Not dramatically. Just enough. And that was the difference now. Before, she would have deflected, laughed, redirected. Now she felt it. Every word. Every truth. Raw. Unfiltered. I thought I knew you, she continued, her voice uneven. I thought I had you figured out. I tilted my head slightly. You didn't try to know me, Evelyn. You decided who I was and stopped there. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away this time. That's what everyone does, she said. They see what's easy, what makes sense. And you became one of them. The words weren't cruel. They didn't need to be. Truth rarely does. She swallowed hard, her gaze dropping briefly to the floor before returning to mine. I was scared, she admitted. That caught me off guard. Not because the word itself was surprising, but because she had never said anything like it before. Evelyn wasn't someone who admitted fear. She performed confidence like it was stitched into her skin. Of what? I asked. Her laugh was soft, bitter, of being nothing. The honesty in her voice hit harder than any accusation she had thrown at me earlier. I watched you struggle, she continued. And I told myself that's what happens when you don't play the game right. When you don't fit. She paused. And then you disappeared. I knew what she meant. The years I pulled away. The silence. The distance that wasn't just physical, but emotional. I didn't disappear, I said. I just stopped trying to be seen by people who weren't looking. That landed. She closed her eyes briefly, like the words were too heavy to hold all at once. "When I heard about your online thing," she said slowly, "I assumed it was just another phase, another attempt that would fade." I didn't respond, because she didn't need interruption. She needed to finish. "But it didn't," she whispered. And instead of asking questions, I ignored it, because if you had actually succeeded, her voice broke slightly. "Then what did that make me?" There it was. Not arrogance, not cruelty, insecurity, deep, quiet, unspoken for years. "It made you my sister," I said gently. "Nothing more, nothing less." She shook her head quickly. "No, it didn't feel like that. It felt like I was falling behind, like I was losing something I didn't even understand." Her hands dropped to her sides, fingers trembling. "So I did what I always do," she said. "I performed. I built a version of myself people would admire." I glanced around the empty ballroom. The version that just collapsed. She winced. "Yes." Silence stretched again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was necessary. "You could have told me the truth," I said after a moment. "About everything." "I know. You could have asked for help." "I know. So why didn't you?" That question lingered longer than the others. Because it mattered more. Because it cut deeper. Evelyn hesitated. Then finally, "Because I didn't think you would help me." The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Years of assumptions, of distance, of missed chances. I took a slow breath. "And why would you think that?" She met my eyes again. "Because I wouldn't have helped you." That hurt. Not sharply, not like before, but in a deeper, more grounded way. Because it wasn't an attack. It was truth. And truth, once seen clearly, doesn't leave room for denial. I nodded slowly. "Fair enough." Her brows furrowed slightly, like she expected me to argue, to defend myself, to prove her wrong. But I didn't, because this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about understanding. "I wasn't a good sister," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I considered that." "You weren't a present one," I replied. "There's a difference." She let out a shaky breath. "I don't know how to fix this." I believed her. For the first time in a long time, I actually believed her. "You don't," I said. Her head snapped up slightly. "What?" "You don't fix this," I repeated. "Not all at once. Not tonight." Confusion flickered across her face. "Then what do I do?" I stepped a little closer, closing the distance between us. "You start by being honest," I said. "With yourself. Not with me. Not with anyone else. Just you." She listened. Really listened. "And then?" she asked. "And then you decide who you want to be when no one's watching." Her eyes softened. "That sounds harder." "It is." Another pause. "But it's real." She nodded slowly, as if committing the idea to memory. "I don't know if I can do it," she admitted. "That's the point," I said. "You don't know yet." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, "Why didn't you walk away?" she asked suddenly. The question surprised me. "You had every reason to," she added. "After everything I've done, everything I said tonight." I thought about that. About the apron, the kitchen, the years of being overlooked, the moment everything broke. "I almost did," I admitted. Her expression tightened slightly. "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Not as the sister who hurt me, not as the person who underestimated me, but as someone human, flawed, complicated, trying, maybe for the first time, to understand herself. "Because walking away would have been easy," I said. "And I've never built anything meaningful by choosing the easy path." Her eyes filled again, but she didn't cry. Not this time. This time, she held it together. Not through force, but through presence. "Do you hate me?" she asked quietly. I answered honestly. "No." Relief flickered across her face, brief, fragile. "But I don't trust you," I added. It faded, replaced by something more grounded. "Acceptance." "I understand," she said. And I believe that too. A small step, but a real one. I'm not going to fix your life, I continued. I'm not your safety net. She nodded. I know. And whatever happens next, you have to face it. I will. Another pause. Then, almost hesitantly, can I try again? She asked. The question hung in the air. Not demanding. Not entitled. Just hopeful. I didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't a moment for easy resolutions. For clean endings. For perfect forgiveness. This was something else. Something slower. More honest. You can try, I said finally. Her shoulders dropped slightly, tension releasing just a little. Thank you. I gave a small nod, but I didn't smile. Not yet, because trust doesn't return in a single moment. It rebuilds. Quietly. Over time. Just like everything else that matters. I turned then, glancing once more around the empty ballroom. The night had changed everything. Not just for Evelyn, but for me too. Because seeing clearly comes with a cost. You lose illusions. You lose comfort. You lose the versions of people you once believed in. But in return, you gain truth. And truth, no matter how painful, is the only place real things can grow. As I walked toward the exit, I heard her voice behind me. Soft. Uncertain. Harper. I paused, but I didn't turn around. Yes. A small breath. Then, I see you now. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the words settle. Not as a victory, not as closure, but as a beginning. Good, I said quietly. And this time, I meant it.